The homeless girl froze in the snow-dusted parking lot the exact moment the biker's daughter stopped breathing, her small body going limp in her father's arms, and every engine around them seemed to fall silent at once. 180 leather-clad riders stood stunned, the night heavy with fear, and in that terrible pause no one knew if the next breath would come in time. What happened in the next few minutes would change every life standing there, but the girl on the curb didn't know that yet, and neither did the men who would soon move as one. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected heroes, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, Only Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Mara had learned to make herself small long before that night, folding her thin coat tighter around her shoulders and keeping her eyes low as she sat near the edge of the parking lot. At 16, she had already lived through more winters than she could count, drifting between shelters and sidewalks, surviving on scraps of kindness and long hours of silence. The roar of motorcycles usually meant trouble to her, so when the convoy rolled in, she braced herself, heart thudding, expecting to be ignored or chased away. She did not expect to see a little girl wrapped in a pink scarf perched on a chrome-heavy bike, laughing and waving at the stars like the world was a safe place. The girl's name was Elowen, and she was the center of her father Calder Hayes's universe. Calder rode at the front that night, proud and watchful, leading a memorial ride that had drawn Hell's Angels from 3 states. They were there to honor a fallen brother, but also to remind themselves they were still alive, still together. When Elowen began to cough, it seemed harmless at first, just a child tired by the cold air and the long ride. Then the coughing turned sharp, her face paling, her small chest fighting for air that suddenly would not come. The moment Elowen stopped breathing, time fractured. Calder dropped to his knees, panic burning through the steel he wore like armor. Mara watched from the curb, her mind screaming for her body to move, but it didn't. Memories surged uninvited, of a younger brother whose breaths had faded while adults argued and hesitated, of the guilt that had followed her like a shadow ever since. Her hands shook uselessly in her pockets as fear rooted her to the ground. Around her, the bikers stood frozen too, stunned by the sight of a child in danger, the kind of danger no amount of toughness could outrun. Then something remarkable happened. One man moved, then another, then dozens. Von Mercer, gray-bearded and steady-eyed, raised an arm, and the chaos snapped into order. Engines cut, jackets were shrugged off and spread on the asphalt to block the cold. Someone ran for a first aid kit. Another cleared space, barking directions without a single shouted word, just motion and intent. 180 riders became a wall against the night, circling Calder and Elowen, shielding them from wind and fear, their faces stripped of bravado and filled with raw concern. Mara felt the freeze crack. She didn't know what gave way first, the memory or the sight of so many men kneeling for one small life, but her legs carried her forward before her thoughts could stop them. She had learned things on the street, fragments of knowledge picked up from watching, listening, surviving. She dropped beside Elowen, hands trembling but purposeful, focusing on the rise and fall she needed to see. The riders didn't question her presence. They made room, trusting the urgency in her movements, trusting that help could come from anywhere. Minutes stretched thin, each one an eternity measured in shallow breaths and whispered prayers that never made it to sound. When Elowen finally gasped, the sound was small but thunderous, ripping through the circle like light through clouds. Calder collapsed forward, tears streaking his weathered face as relief broke him open. Around them, hardened men wiped their eyes with the backs of their hands, unashamed. Mara leaned back on her heels, breathless, her heart racing with a hope she hadn't felt in years. Sirens arrived late, but by then the crisis had shifted. Paramedics took over, praising the quick response, lifting Elowen onto a stretcher with gentle efficiency. As the ambulance doors closed, Calder looked around at the sea of faces that had held his world together, and then at the girl standing apart, unsure if she belonged. Vaughn stepped forward, draping a heavy jacket over Mara's shoulders, the leather warm and smelling of road and oil, a tangible promise that she was seen. The night didn't end there. While Elowen was treated and stabilized, the riders did something no one expected. They pooled money meant for fuel and food and handed it to a shelter down the road, making sure Mara had a bed, clean clothes, and a chance to rest without fear. One by one, they wrote down numbers, names, offers of help, a network forming where loneliness had lived. It wasn't charity born of pity, but respect earned in a moment when fear was met with action. If this story is touching your heart, please pause for a second and like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Only Kindness. Stories like Mara's and Elowen's remind us that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, and your engagement helps keep that message alive. Mara visited Elowen weeks later, standing in a hospital room filled with balloons and sunlight, watching the little girl sleep, breathing steady and strong. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The look Calder gave her said enough, a silent thank you woven with a promise that this wasn't the end of her story, just the turning point.